the switchboard in Briar Hollow. Eleanor Price told herself she was coming back only because the grant was good and the rent was cheap. Briar Hollow, Pennsylvania, population barely hanging on, row houses with peeling paint like old stickers on a lunchbox, a shuttered brick mill that the county had repurposed into a community resource center with fluorescent lights that hummed in the key of apology. She'd left the state after college, promising never to return, but the job listing had said senior outreach coordinator, and that sounded like a life raft. She liked the idea of calling parents who needed help with utilities, of bringing warm blankets to seniors, of being useful in a town that had been told for 50 years it was worthless. The resource center used to be the Pendale Textile Switchboard building. The old copper lines still ran through the basement like veins. On her first day, the director, Walter Dunn, handed her a key ring the size of a dinner roll and said, "You'll get lost down there. Everyone does." He smiled the way men smile when they're bracing for a storm you haven't noticed yet. Her desk faced a window onto Main Street, where the only stoplight blinked red, red, red through the day like a heartbeat. Across the street, a church with a broken bell tower cast a skewed shadow that slid across the block around noon. When the shadow reached the resource center, the phones sometimes died for a minute. "Power hiccup," said Walter. "It happens." She found a room upstairs where volunteers sorted donated clothes and a closet where boxes of toys were labeled with handwritten tags, boys 5'7", girls 8'10", misc beanies. Someone with careful script had drawn small angels in the corners of each label. There was a warmth here Eleanor wanted to believe in. It lasted until lunch. She took her turkey sandwich to the back stair and met the building supervisor, Ruth Harrow, who wore a denim jacket with a patch that read, "If it ain't broke, you're new here." Ruth had the flat gaze of someone who knows every hinge and every rumor. "Don't pick up the line if it rings after 7, Ruth said, unwrapping a cucumber sandwich. "What line?" Ruth pointed toward the basement with her chin. "The old one." "We still have a landline?" Ruth chewed, swallowed, and looked at Eleanor's sandwich as if it had offended her. "You'll hear it. It sounds like a knock you're mistaking for a bell." Eleanor laughed because the only other option was to ask follow-up questions that made her sound like a child. "And if I do pick up?" Ruth shrugged. "Then you'll have someone to talk to?" That night, Eleanor stayed late filling out intake forms. Autumn rain rinsed the street into a single reflective stripe. At 7:08, something in the building shifted. Not volume, pressure. The air grew tight, like she'd walked into a badly tuned note. Then she heard it. A ringing that wasn't quite a ring, a knock with a tail. She thought it was the radiators, then the elevator, then the storm. She told herself anything that would let her keep writing until the intake forms blurred and the humming made her teeth ache. She stood. The sound was coming from below her. The basement. She found the stairs by accident, a thin metal door behind a rack of winter coats. The air down there had a sweetness that made her think of old pennies and wet pine. Fluorescent lights flickered into existence in a row as she walked, blooming ahead of her like a path being drawn in chalk by an impatient hand. Cable spools the size of wagon wheels slept against the walls. At the end of the corridor, a wood door with a brass plate, switchboard. The ringing stopped the moment she touched the knob. She opened the door to a room full of ghosts with jobs, panels studded with jacks and cords, metal stools with leather seats, a calendar still thumbtacked above a desk. August 1974, with a daisy chain of pencil marks through days that had been survived. If she'd expected dust, she was disappointed. Everything was clean in the way of a kitchen whose owner has died, but the routine remains. Wiped counters, folded towels, the sense that someone will be back any minute. The phone on the desk was black and rotary and heavy. She picked up the receiver because she was not superstitious and not afraid, and not the kind of woman who jumped at the sound of her own breath. "Hello?" she said, and a dozen small yellow bulbs pricked to life on the panels, as if surprised to be woken. A voice came through the line, a woman's voice, and it sounded like the first seconds after waking from a dream you don't want to lose. "Operator?" the voice asked. "This is the Pendale Resource Center." Eleanor's voice made a stranger of her mouth. "Who are you trying to reach?" "I'm trying to remember," said the woman. "It's harder at night." The line went dead, and every bulb winked out. Eleanor put the receiver down like it might shatter and backed out of the room. She did not tell Walter. She did not tell Ruth. At home, she did not sleep. When she closed her eyes, she saw yellow bulbs blinking like eyelids. In the morning, the building felt kinder. People came in to ask for help paying their heating bills. She went with water and patience to a house on Sycamore Street, where a grandmother was raising 2 kids and the oven door would not close. She scheduled flu shot clinics and posted flyers about job training at the old VFW hall. She walked the block and felt the town reconciling its lungs to a new breath. For a few days, she allowed herself the lie that work could be a fence, strong enough to keep out whatever had happened in the basement. Then the phone rang at 6:58. She looked at the clock and felt ridiculous for looking. She told herself she would not go down. She went down. "Operator," the woman said again, softer, as if embarrassed to be the one to call. "I'm not the operator," Eleanor said, "but I can listen." "You're new," said the woman. "They told me to wait until you arrived." "Who's they?" "The ones upstairs." Eleanor glanced at the ceiling as if expecting to see shoes. Above her was the first-floor lobby. Upstairs meant the board of directors, or the church, or the town, or something you did not name out loud. "What do you need?" Eleanor asked, because that was the only question offered in her training for use when the world made no sense. The woman on the line took a breath that shook like paper. "I need you to tell me which child is mine." "Excuse me?" "The hospital mixed them," the woman said. "Walter said it happens. He said they'd sort it out. But now the nurse won't let me see either of them, and the pastor says quiet is mercy. They said to call the operator." Eleanor felt anger like a clean heat. "What's your name?" "Clara," the woman said. "Clara Whitaker. They told me not to say it. They told me names stick places. That's why the men say only last names down in the hole." "The hole?" "The mine," Clara said. "And the word mine did the thing words do when they arrive with extra rooms attached. You'd think it would open onto tunnels or unions, but this one opened onto the hospital and the church and the phone in Eleanor's hand. They said the babies will be fine if we let it go, but it's been 3 days, and I don't know who I am without knowing who he is." "What hospital?" Eleanor asked, already typing with her free hand, pulling up the list of county facilities. "We only have the one," Clara said. "St. Matthew's. St. Matthew's had closed in 1989. The building was now a storage warehouse for a roofing company that advertised on the back of church bulletins. Eleanor searched anyway. She found the historical page. Photos of the maternity ward painted the color of satisfied peaches. She found an article about merging with a bigger hospital in Harrisburg. She found nothing about a baby mix-up. Clara spoke again. "They'll be coming," she said. "When they hear me on this line, please, tell me which boy is mine." "Clara," Eleanor said carefully. "What year is it?" There was a pause like a hallway between rooms. "The year of the walkout," Clara said. "The year the bell rang without a hand. The year the lights flickered during the baptism and everyone said don't look up." Another breath. "Please." Something moved in the switchboard room. A change in weight. The feeling of a theater when a second audience arrives. Eleanor wiped her palms on her jeans and told Clara she wouldn't hang up, then climbed the steps 2 at a time, dragging the cord with her. At the top, Ruth stood with a flashlight that wasn't on. Her face held the patience of a parent about to let you make your own mistake. "Don't leave her," Ruth said, nodding toward the phone. "I'm calling the hospital," Eleanor said. "You won't get them," Ruth said. "After 7, lines only go down." "Down where?" Ruth didn't answer. She pressed something into Eleanor's free hand, a key tagged 2B archives. "You'll want records. If you mean to help, do it all the way." The archives were behind a door that had once been painted a better decade. Inside, boxes towered in constellations. Eleanor left the phone on speaker, set it on a metal stool, and searched. 4 boxes in, she found St. Matthew's 1973-1976. Among stapled discharge papers and yellowed memos, she found a thin folder labeled Incident Maternity. 1 page, typed, signed by W. Done. Administrative Liaison. Clara Whitaker admitted 314. 2 male infants, untagged post-delivery due to generator failure. Families Whitaker, Green. Agree to defer final matching until Sunday review. Community guidance, silence preferred. Eleanor read it twice. Walter Dunn, her director. He would have been in his 20s then. She took a photo of the page with her phone and sent it to her personal email without knowing why that felt necessary. She picked up the receiver again. "Clara, I found something." "I can hear their feet on the stairs," Clara said. "Tell me fast." The page didn't say which infant was which. It said only that visual matching proved inconclusive and that community elders advised pastoral adjudication. Eleanor could hear men's voices now, tinny and far. She thought of Walter's key ring and his easy smile. She thought of the broken bell tower's shadow, the minute the phones died each day, the humming in her teeth. "Clara," she said, and something in her cracked. Her voice came raw. "Your son is the one who hiccups when he falls asleep. He has a gray fleck in his left eye. He will love the sound of the river after a storm. He will break his wrist at the quarry at 12 and claim it never hurt. He will leave town at 19 and come back at 32 to fix your porch step and not say why he stayed as long as he did. He is the one who looks at you like he's known your face for 1,000 years. The men's voices grew louder. Eleanor could hear the edge in them that men get when they're sure God is on their side. "How do you know?" Clara whispered. "Because I'm holding the line," Eleanor said, "and I won't put you on hold." Clara laughed then, a small, startled sound that made the bulbs above the panel tremble. "Thank you." There was a scuffle, a door. The line hissed. "They say I'm being dramatic. Be inconvenient," Eleanor said. "Be impossible." The call ended as if someone had cut a rope. The bulbs went dark. Upstairs, the building exhaled. Ruth leaned in the doorway of the archive room, arms crossed. "You made your first enemy," she said. "Wear comfortable shoes." The next morning, Walter called Eleanor into his office. He gestured toward the chair, leaned back, and steepled his fingers like a man asking God to please make this quick. "I hear you've been exploring," he said. "I was looking for records," she said. He smiled. "We don't look back here. People get stuck that way." "What happened at St. Matthew's?" she asked. She laid the photocopied page on his desk. He did not glance down. He did not have to. "Eleanor," he said, and somehow made her name sound like a misdemeanor. "You're a good worker. Don't confuse work with crusade. The center is held together by faith, duct tape, and people not asking questions that wake the old dogs. Babies aren't dogs." He stood. He did it gently, in increments, like a tide. "I'll say this once. After 7, you are not to be in this building." She did not argue. She also did not obey. Word traveled in Briar Hollow without phones. 2 days later, an elderly man in a Vietnam cap stopped Eleanor outside the post office and pressed a folded photograph into her hand. "My Ruth," he said, pointing to a woman holding a newborn. "They never let her bring her home. Said the pastor would decide. Pastor's dead. Still waiting." At the diner, a girl barely out of high school slid a napkin toward Eleanor with a name and a date. Green, 314 boy. On the back, "What if I'm mixed?" At the resource center, the requests at Eleanor's desk no longer fit the intake forms. A man asked how to make a gravestone stay in place when someone kept prying it loose. A teenager asked if there was a class for learning to be mean in a way that didn't leave marks. A woman asked if Eleanor could write down her name and put it somewhere safe in case it got taken again. After 7, the line kept ringing. Sometimes the voices were lost and old. Sometimes they were small and very clear. Sometimes Eleanor was the only person in the room, and sometimes she knew she was not. She started leaving the switchboard door propped open, ridiculous, like keeping a parachute in a closet, but it made the air move. She began to write. Names, dates, arrangements made in the name of mercy. Decisions made in rooms where women could not speak. She wrote the names of pastors and principals, and the men who called themselves elders, and the single mother who wasn't allowed to put her daughter's photo in the yearbook because the father's family worshipped at the church with the broken bell. She wrote it all and copied it twice and hid the copies in 3 places. Eleanor had always thought of courage as loud, a speech, a scene. It turned out to be repetitive, answering, listening, documenting, not yielding the line. There were nights she crawled into bed and slept like a manhole cover dropping. There were nights she watched the ceiling and thought of copper wires and rivers and what we tether ourselves to when the people in charge call our insisting hysterical. The men came when the leaves had fallen and the hills looked like old knuckles. 3 of them. You don't need their names. They wore the politeness of men who would destroy your life and wish you a blessed day. Walter stood with them, his smile an apology for not stopping this. "We've had complaints," said the tallest. "You're frightening people. You're dredging up confusion. We're a small town, Miss Price. We need cooperation to keep the peace." "We need facts to make peace," she said. "Call it what it is and name who hit it." "Our pastor teaches that silence is a kind of love," the second man said. "We don't rake through graves here." "Maybe you should," she said. "Maybe there are other people in them." "After tonight," the tallest said, "the building will close at 5. You'll turn in your keys." She didn't, but they changed the locks. Ruth met her out back with a thermos and a crowbar. "Maintenance still has the old codes," she said. "I'll walk you down." In the switchboard room, Eleanor dialed every number that would take her to the outside. The county paper, the Harrisburg station, an attorney whose aunt knew Ruth from bingo. She read names into a recorder. She scanned every page she could and emailed it everywhere she could think to send it. When the line rang at 7:03, she answered the way she always did. "Operator?" a boy whispered. "I'm in the hospital. Mama's sleeping." "What's your name?" "It might be Sean," he said. "Or it might be Thomas. They keep saying it both ways." "Do you hiccup when you fall asleep?" she asked, and he giggled. "Sometimes." "You're Sean," she said. "You're the one who will skip rocks 4 at a time, and you'll teach your cousin to whistle through his fingers, and you will not be easy to manage, and you will not be ashamed of that. Tell them you are Sean." "Okay," he said, like yes. The door upstairs slammed. Footsteps poured down the stairwell like marbles. "Time," Ruth said, hand on Eleanor's shoulder. Eleanor did not hang up. She put the receiver on the desk with the line open, slid the recorder into her pocket, and met the men in the hallway. She did not give them drama. She watched their mouths. She made sure to see who looked at her and who looked away. They told her she was fired. She said, "Okay." They told her the building was county property and not to return. She said, "Okay." They told her that silence was the only way to move forward. "No," she said. "Silence is the way you stay." They escorted her out. Walter didn't meet her eyes. On the sidewalk, the broken bell tower's shadow cut across her shoes. Ruth squeezed her elbow. "You held the line," she said. "It's somebody else's turn." Eleanor found a job in Carlisle 2 months later, writing grants for a food co-op. The pay was better and the lights didn't hum. She could have called that a happy ending. But endings, like switchboards, are mostly connections. The folder she'd copied ended up on a reporter's desk in Harrisburg. The story ran on a Tuesday in January. The comment section called her a liar and a saint and a troublemaker. Women suddenly remembered. A school board meeting turned into a catalog of things that had never been allowed in the minutes. The pastor retired for health reasons. The county commissioner asked the state for an inquiry. The roof of the church was repaired with money raised by people who insisted that a building that had held so many unsaid things deserved to be loud for once. At 7:12 one evening, in her apartment in Carlisle, Eleanor heard a ring that wasn't quite a ring. It came from the linen closet, which held nothing but a mop, and the knowledge that she was not finished. She opened the door. There was no phone. There were only shelves and the smell of old pennies and wet pine. "Operator?" a voice said, and Eleanor laughed, because of course. "I'm here," she said. "I'm trying to remember," the voice said. "It's harder at night." "We'll do it together," Eleanor said. She sat on the hallway floor, with her back to the wall, index finger tapping 1, 2, 3, 4 against the tile. "Start at the beginning." The voice told her a story like water wearing a stone. Eleanor listened until her legs fell asleep, and the radiator sighed and the sky forgot to be black. When the voice was finished, Eleanor said, "Thank you and good night, and yes, we will write it down." She hung up the nothing in her hand and stood and felt tired and young and mean in the way you have to be to love anyone in this world that is held up by people insisting on their own names. She went to the kitchen, poured water, and looked out at the apartments across the alley. In one window, a woman rocked a baby. In another, a teenage boy practiced a speech, hands cutting the air, words unafraid. In a third, a man sat very still. She saluted him with her glass. He did not move. Maybe he wasn't a man at all. Maybe he was the night. Either way, she knew his name. We keep telling ourselves that the past is down like a basement. It isn't. It's wired into us like copper that keeps carrying a current no matter how many times the building changes hands. The trick is not to be the light. The trick is to be the line, stubborn and humming, connecting one voice to another until the story can't be shut off by men with keys. At 7:03 the next night, the line rang again. Eleanor answered. "Operator?" "Yes," she said. "I'm listening."